I'm Brett Thomas, and I've been helping leaders solve their biggest problems, influence and motivate their teams, and guide their organizations to success for more than 20 years. In this video in the series, I'll answer the question, what do effective leaders actually do? Is there a model or framework that can help me really understand this complex skill? In my book, Reinventing Leadership, which I'll give you a free copy of if you want, details at the end of this video, I spend a whole chapter answering this question. It's chapter 4, titled The Universal Leadership Model. I'm going to highlight some of the most important ideas now from this chapter to help answer this important question. When we combine the Leadership Rosetta Stone, which clearly articulates the 4 distinct approaches to leadership, with the inherent leadership responsibilities and the 9 essential leadership skills, you have what I call the universal leadership model. My colleagues and I are literally the only ones who are approaching leadership and leadership development in this uniquely effective way. Our universal leadership model is an integrally informed approach to leadership. This is not merely a model or framework. This approach to leadership and leadership development is not theoretical. Rather, it is tried and proven to be extraordinarily effective over more than 2 decades with thousands of companies, including nonprofit companies and other types of organizations around the world, even in developing countries. Many people familiar with the field of leadership development believe that this approach is one of the most effective, if not the most effective approach to leadership development that exists anywhere. In this portion of the training, we will assemble the universal leadership model from the components we've already introduced in the previous sections. 1, the Leadership Rosetta Stone. 2, inherent leadership responsibilities. I also refer to those as the essential abilities of leadership. And 3, the leadership core competencies. You'll recall that we also refer to these as practices, and we also refer to these as the 9 skill sets. For clarity's sake, I'll bring one element in at a time, illustrate each, and briefly explain it, and then combine them as we assemble the model in a very kind of logical and also intuitive way. First, recall the 4 universal leadership styles: strategic, humanistic, authority, and autocratic. Next, the Leadership Rosetta Stone revealed the 4 predominant follower worldviews, and we learned that each worldview has a specific definition of legitimate leadership and is looking for very different things in people who they view as credible leaders that they're willing to trust and follow and offer discretionary effort to. You will recall the names of the 4 worldviews: modern, postmodern, traditional, and imperial. We now recognize that for leadership to be viewed as effective by those being led, the correct leadership approach or style must be paired with the follower's worldview, which dictates how they define effective leadership and what they look for in someone who they consider to be a credible leader. When we bring the styles and the worldviews together, we can illustrate it like this. In this illustration, we can see that the correct leadership style is paired with the worldview of the follower according to the style of leadership that follower, again, will view as credible and legitimate. Next, you'll recall that there are 3 inherent leadership responsibilities which point to 3 essential leadership abilities that all leaders must possess to be considered competent and adequately well-rounded leaders. This part of the universal leadership model provides the most fundamental answer to this age-old question: What do effective leaders do? I want to take a moment to break this down for you to make sure that it is crystal clear. So, in its essence, just think about this logically. What do effective, competent leaders do universally? Well, at the very minimum, first, they set the goal and create the plan. Second, they pull together a group of engaged and motivated individuals who can coordinate their efforts to get the work done. And three, they make sure that the plan gets implemented successfully. Common sense, right? In other words, planning, teaming, and executing. When you take into account the leadership style, you can see that different types of leaders will take a different approach. That is, use a different style as they fulfill these responsibilities and as they express these essential abilities. Put another way, all leaders demonstrate these three essential abilities, but they use different styles. Let me give you a few examples. One leader may use a humanistic approach, also known as an inclusive leadership approach, to planning, teaming, and executing. Another leader may use an autocratic approach, also known as command and control. Another leader may use a strategic approach, which is an expert-based approach. And yet another may use an authority approach, which is also known as chain of command or rule-based approach. Sadly, some leaders lack any versatility at all and always use their same native style. In this example, I'll say their native style is the strategic style, with all followers. Some people, their native style is an inclusive, humanistic style, and they use that with all followers. Some have a more traditional style. It's very hierarchical. It's rule-based and authority-centric, and we call that the authority leadership style. And they try to use that with all followers. But the problem is that different followers have different value systems, different worldviews. And that one native or favorite style will only work for a third or at most a half of the people that you lead and that you manage. For the other 25 to 75% of the people that you're leading, that one style may come across as ineffective, out of touch, lame, not trustworthy, clueless, or even foolish. Versatile leaders, this includes all leaders who have had the benefit of my integral leadership training, develop much needed capacity to switch their style up and emphasize different leadership styles or approaches with different people and circumstances as the situation warrants. This next simplified illustration shows the three essential abilities in the middle area along with the 9 skill sets around the outer ring. Now we'll want to bring the 4 leadership styles and the 4 follower worldviews back into our illustration. This way, our illustration will reflect the fact that leaders can engage the 3 inherent leadership responsibilities, planning, teaming, and executing, along with their corresponding practices along the outer ring using any of these leadership styles. And as you've learned, in the same way that beauty is in the eye of the beholder, leadership is in the eye of the follower. To be viewed as credible in the eyes of your followers, you must use the appropriate leadership style that pairs with the style the follower is looking for, again, based on their worldview. Now, this version of the model visually suggests that for each ability in the middle section and for each of the 9 skill sets, outer section, there are 4 different styles to draw upon. There are still 2 more elements to represent in the universal leadership model that we've started to assemble. It's organizational context, or what I also simply call circumstances. Whether or not a given leader and their style or approach will be effective is largely a function of the context, the circumstances. When we add organizational context, the circumstances to our universal leadership model, it looks like this. There's just one last element to include in our illustration that we haven't really talked about yet. This last element, you can see here at the center, bears special interest. In this illustration, it's represented by a small circle in the middle. To be effective, this leader must first and foremost be able to make sense out of their circumstances. In many of our courses and coaching programs, we go into a lot of detail about sense making. The next important thing for a leader to understand after understanding the organizational context is, who are the followers that I wish to lead and influence? And the most important thing about a follower's psychological makeup is their worldview, their value system, because it determines which of the 4 leadership styles, approaches, they'll strongly prefer and willingly follow. So the next logical piece of the universal leadership model that we want to bring back in is the followers. And as you can see here, we represent the followers' worldview with modern, postmodern, traditional, and imperial. Leaders are viewed as credible and trustworthy by followers when the leaders use the leadership style preferred by those followers, indicated in the diagram by the appropriate leadership styles being paired with follower worldviews. At this point, you should already know what comes next in our model, the inherent leadership responsibilities, and also referred to as essential abilities. In this illustration, it's represented by the words planning, teaming, and executing. Next, we know that leaders must engage in many activities and use their skill sets to fulfill those responsibilities. Of course, each of these skill sets looks different according to the leadership style being used. Once we bring those back in, we have the full model. Please study this simple yet profound model. If you learn and apply it, it will revolutionize your leadership. So that's all the time we have for this short video. Thanks for watching. As I mentioned, I'm giving away a free digital copy of my book, Reinventing Leadership, and a free training where I whiteboard out on video all the main ideas in the book, and I explain in very precise detail what all the most successful leaders do, their 3 abilities and 9 skill sets, and I tell you exactly how to implement the world's most effective leadership skill building method. If you want to become a more influential, impactful, and successful leader, then definitely take a moment to click the link below this video or point your browser to reinventingleadership.com. I look forward to continuing this conversation in the free training on my website. So click the link and I'll see you shortly.